The unified Dominion arrived above Earth without warning, their massive ships blocking out the sun like a slow-moving eclipse. Cities across the planet went silent as global defense networks detected hundreds of unknown craft holding steady in orbit. There were no signs of aggression, but also no signs of peace. Only control. The kind that did not ask for permission. Inside the lead vessel, Commander Soren Vall stood on the observation deck, watching the blue planet rotate below. To him, Earth looked fragile, almost decorative. His species had crossed hundreds of star systems, and every time they met a new world, it followed the same pattern: fear, confusion, and surrender. Earth, he believed, would be no different. On the surface, Captain Alan Reed was assigned as the human liaison to the Dominion forces. He had been selected not for politics, but for discipline. He was calm under pressure, precise in communication, and had served in operations that most governments did not officially speak about. Now, he stood inside a reinforced meeting chamber built in a neutral zone, waiting for first contact to be established. The Dominion delegation appeared through a controlled transport field. Their armor was smooth, dark, and without visible seams, as if grown rather than built. They moved with absolute coordination, stopping exactly where protocol demanded. Commander Soren Vall stepped forward first, his presence filling the room with quiet authority. Alan observed them carefully. Every movement was measured. Every glance calculated. There was no curiosity in their eyes, only assessment. As if humanity was already placed inside a category, and the only question left was how quickly it would comply. Soren spoke through a translation interface that converted alien speech into human language instantly. His tone was calm, almost bored. "So this is Earth," he said, looking around the chamber. "A developing civilization with fragmented governance and outdated defense coordination." Alan replied in an even voice. "We prefer to call it independent nations." Soren tilted his head slightly, as if the concept was irrelevant. Independence creates inefficiency. Behind him, another Dominion officer reviewed Earth data streams projected into the air. Images of human cities, history, wars, and cultural records floated like transparent layers. They studied everything quickly, far faster than any human analyst could. Soren's attention shifted to Earth's historical military records. Old footage appeared: ancient battles, early wars, soldiers in outdated equipment. He watched for only a few seconds before letting out a small sound that almost resembled amusement. "These are your legendary warriors?" he asked. "Armored men on foot. Wooden ships. Steel blades. Primitive formations." Alan did not respond immediately. He had been warned not to challenge perceptions too early. The Dominion did not respond well to emotional resistance. They respected only data and outcomes. Soren continued, scrolling through more records. Spartan units. Samurai clans. Viking raiders. Your species seems fascinated with mythologizing failure. Alan's expression remained steady, but something in his eyes sharpened slightly. Those are not myths. They are historical accounts. Soren turned fully toward him now. If they were effective, your species would have evolved past war long ago. The statement was not an insult in his tone. It was simply analysis. That was what made it more unsettling. Alan finally spoke again. Human history is not a straight line. It is layered. Some parts are missing from public records. Soren paused for a moment, then dismissed the idea with a subtle gesture. All civilizations say that when they lack strength. Outside the chamber, Earth's satellites tracked the Dominion fleet. Defense networks waited for instructions that never came. Governments argued in silence, unsure whether they were facing negotiation or occupation. Inside the chamber, the Dominion began running simulations based on Earth's recorded history. Holographic projections formed battles from different eras. They replayed them, adjusted variables, and calculated outcomes. Every result ended the same way: Earth losing within acceptable margins. Soren watched these results with increasing certainty. Predictable, he said. Your conflicts follow emotional decision patterns. That is why you lose efficiency. Alan replied quietly, we are still here. That statement caused a brief pause. One of the Dominion analysts recalculated Earth's survival probability across recorded history. The number was inconsistent with their assumptions. It should not have been possible for a civilization this inefficient to persist so long. Soren noticed the inconsistency as well, but dismissed it as missing data. Survival does not equal strength, he said. Only adaptation efficiency matters. Alan looked toward the projection of Earth again. Somewhere beneath the layers of recorded history, there were gaps. Entire decades that did not match known technological progression. Reports that were sealed. Conflicts that were never officially explained. He had seen fragments during his service. Things that were never discussed in briefings. Not because they were irrelevant, but because they were not supposed to be public knowledge. Soren stepped closer to the projection of Earth's ancient wars. Your legends are exaggerated, he said again. No civilization survives on stories alone. Alan did not argue. He simply watched. Because he knew something the Dominion did not. Earth stories were not just stories. They were only what remained after everything else had been removed. And this meeting was only the beginning of what the Dominion thought they understood. The Dominion troops did not treat Earth's history as something serious. For them, it was entertainment. In their training complex orbiting the planet, vast simulation chambers recreated human wars in perfect detail. Every battlefield from Earth's recorded past was rebuilt with exact terrain, weather patterns, and weapon limitations. It was all displayed like a game meant for practice, not respect. Commander Soren Vall stood at the center of one such chamber as the first simulation began. Around him, Barketh soldiers took positions inside glowing platforms that allowed full sensory immersion. The system loaded a recreation of an ancient Earth battlefield, where human soldiers once fought in close formations with shields and spears. To the Dominion, it looked slow. Too slow. Too simple. The simulation began. Human soldiers advanced in tight ranks, shields raised, moving with discipline but limited range. The Dominion trainees watched through shared projection fields, seeing every movement from above and within. At first, there was silence. Then came laughter. One of the younger Dominion officers tilted his head. They walk into danger willingly. Another responded, they have no long-range suppression. No aerial control. No adaptive shielding. How did they survive anything? The Dominion troops did not treat Earth's history as something serious. For them, it was entertainment. In their training complex orbiting the planet, vast simulation chambers recreated human wars in perfect detail. Every battlefield from Earth's recorded past was rebuilt with exact terrain, weather patterns, and weapon limitations. It was all displayed like a game meant for practice, not respect. Commander Soren Vall stood at the center of one such chamber as the first simulation began. Around him, Barketh soldiers took positions inside glowing platforms that allowed full sensory immersion. The system loaded a recreation of an ancient Earth battlefield, where human soldiers once fought in close formations with shields and spears. To the Dominion, it looked slow. Too slow. Too simple. The simulation began. Human soldiers advanced in tight ranks, shields raised, moving with discipline but limited range. The Dominion trainees watched through shared projection fields, seeing every movement from above and within. At first, there was silence. Then came laughter. One of the younger Dominion officers tilted his head. They walk into danger willingly. Another responded, they have no long-range suppression. No aerial control. No adaptive shielding. How did they survive anything? Soren did not speak immediately. He watched the formations break apart under simulated pressure. The human lines held for a time, then collapsed as expected. The system marked it as a historical loss event. A Dominion soldier leaned forward. "This is what they call legendary." The laughter grew louder. It was not angry laughter. It was worse. It was dismissal. The kind that erased importance. A few days after the simulations began, Earth Command made a quiet decision. They requested the presence of a retired soldier. There was no ceremony, no announcement, and no attention from the Dominion side. It was treated as a formality, something Earth was trying in desperation to appear useful. The man who arrived at the neutral facility was Ethan Cross. He did not wear a uniform that showed rank. He did not carry any visible weapon. His steps were steady but unremarkable. To the Dominion soldiers watching from observation panels, he looked ordinary. Old Earth personnel often did. Fragile, slow, and irrelevant. Commander Soren Vall received the report with minimal interest. "A retired unit?" he asked. "Yes," an analyst replied. "Human military history designation only. No active command role." Soren gave a short nod. "Then he has no value in current evaluation." Ethan was allowed into the simulation facility without restriction. No escort was assigned. No Dominion officer bothered to greet him. He walked through the wide corridor lined with glowing data displays, each one showing Earth's battles being replayed and judged. He did not react to the laughter he heard from nearby chambers. He did not react to the tone of superiority in their voices. He simply observed. Inside the main simulation hall, Dominion troops were running another scenario. This one was based on modern Earth warfare. Tanks, aircraft, infantry formations, all reconstructed from recorded data. The Dominion had already declared it primitive but slightly more structured than ancient Earth conflict. Ethan stopped at the edge of the observation zone. Captain Alan Reed noticed him first. Alan gave a small nod of recognition. Ethan returned it without words. The Dominion did not acknowledge him at all. To them, he was not part of the evaluation process. He was not even a variable worth measuring. Soren Vall glanced once in his direction and then looked away. "Let him observe," he said. "Observation does not change outcome." The simulation began. Dominion tactical units moved through reconstructed urban terrain. Human defense forces responded according to recorded doctrine. The Dominion adjusted strategy in real time, breaking human formations quickly and efficiently. It was clean. Controlled. Predictable. The Dominion soldiers watched from above, commenting as they did in previous sessions. No adaptive resistance. Predictable retreat patterns. Low coordination under pressure. Each statement came with quiet amusement, as if confirming something already known. Ethan Cross stood still. His eyes followed every movement on the battlefield projection. He did not speak. He did not react emotionally. But he was not simply watching. He was reading. He saw things the Dominion did not notice. Not in the human forces, but in the way the Dominion interpreted them. Their assumptions were constant. Their models did not account for irregular behavior unless it already existed in their database. Anything outside their pattern was treated as error, not possibility. The simulation ended with Dominion victory, as expected. The room filled again with casual discussion. One officer said, "Even their modern era shows no real escalation in tactical complexity." Another added, "They never reach beyond reaction-based warfare." Soren nodded slightly. Confirmed limitation. Alan glanced at Ethan, but Ethan still did not speak. Instead, Ethan stepped closer to one of the projection panels. It displayed a breakdown of the simulation results. Loss ratios, engagement times, predictive failure points. He studied it carefully. A Dominion technician noticed him and frowned slightly. "You are not authorized for system review." Ethan replied calmly, "I am not reviewing your system." The technician paused. "Then what are you doing?" Ethan did not answer immediately. He studied the numbers again, then stepped back. "I am looking at what you are not seeing," he finally said. The Dominion nearby exchanged brief looks. Some found the comment meaningless. Others found it irritating. Soren turned slightly. "Explain," he said, not out of curiosity, but as a test. Ethan looked toward the simulation field where human forces had just been defeated again. "You think these results are about strength," he said. "They are not." Soren's tone remained flat. "Then what are they about?" Ethan hesitated for a moment, then answered simply. "They are about limits you assume are permanent." A faint silence followed. Alan watched carefully now. He had seen this before in fragments of old Earth records. Moments where understanding and dismissal crossed paths, but never aligned. Soren dismissed Ethan's words with a slight motion. "All civilizations create meaning where there is none," he said. "Your species is no different." Ethan did not argue. Instead, he turned his attention back to the simulation data. He noticed something else now. The Dominion systems were extremely precise in modeling human failure, but they never simulated human unpredictability as a strategy. Only as error. That difference mattered. Ethan's face remained calm, but his eyes narrowed slightly. Not in anger, but in recognition. Because he had seen that mistake before. Not in simulations. In real war. The Dominion assumed he was just an old soldier with no relevance. They assumed Earth had sent him out of desperation or pride. But Ethan Cross was not there to be acknowledged. He was there to understand how far they were willing to misunderstand before it became dangerous for them. And as he stood in silence while they laughed at Earth's past, he began to realize something simple. They were not just underestimating humanity. They were measuring it using rules humanity had already broken long ago. Ethan Cross did not ask for permission again. After days of silent observation inside the Dominion facility, he had learned something important. The system was not fully closed to him. It was layered. Earth's representatives were given limited access, but not complete isolation. That meant gaps existed, small pathways inside the data network where older Earth security protocols still held authority. He knew those protocols. He had helped design some of them in his younger years. Late in the cycle, when most Dominion personnel were occupied with another simulation run, Ethan moved quietly through a restricted access corridor. No alarms followed him. No immediate response came. The Dominion believed Earth personnel were harmless inside their controlled zones. That belief created small blind spots. Alan Reed noticed Ethan's absence, but did not immediately report it. Something about Ethan's behavior suggested purpose, not escape. Inside a sealed data chamber, Ethan placed his hand on an outdated Earth authentication panel. It hesitated for a moment, then recognized him. Old military clearance codes, long thought obsolete, still carried silent authority in hidden systems. The door unlocked. Inside, the room was dark except for a central interface platform. Ethan stepped forward and activated it. A wave of encrypted data unfolded into the air, forming layers of files marked with red classification symbols. Most of it was heavily restricted. Not just by rank, but by category. Entire time periods of Earth military history were locked behind isolation codes that even modern governments did not fully acknowledge. Ethan did not hesitate. He began unlocking sections one by one. The first files appeared normal. Old conflicts. Unknown reports. Missing documentation. Then the pattern changed. There were battles listed that had no official records in any public Earth archive. Engagements marked as non-terrestrial contact events. Entire military divisions listed as deployed, but never publicly acknowledged as existing. Ethan opened the first archived footage. The screen flickered. At first, it looked like a ruined city at night. Smoke filled the streets. Human soldiers moved carefully through broken structures. Their weapons were familiar, but their targets were not visible at first. Then the camera adjusted. Shapes appeared in the shadows. Tall, distorted figures moving faster than human sight should allow. The soldiers opened fire immediately. Not with panic, but with practiced coordination. This was not confusion. This was familiarity. Ethan's expression did not change, but his breathing slowed. The footage continued. The human unit split into smaller groups, flanking positions instinctively, reacting to movement patterns that did not match any known Earth wildlife or human enemy. The engagement was fast, brutal, and controlled. And then one of the alien figures became fully visible. It was not recorded in any Dominion database. Not yet. Ethan stopped the playback for a moment. He accessed another file. More footage loaded. Different location. Different era. Same pattern. Human soldiers fighting unknown entities in forests, deserts, oceans, even underground facilities. Some engagements showed advanced human weapons that did not match the historical timeline Dominion had been using. Ethan leaned closer. These were not isolated incidents. They were cycles. Each generation had faced something that was never publicly acknowledged. And each time, records had been sealed, rewritten, or erased. Then a final file opened. This one carried a higher classification level than the others. It required multiple overrides even to access playback. The screen showed space. Not Earth orbit. Deep space. A human fleet, smaller than Dominion forces, but highly coordinated. They were engaging structures that looked like drifting alien constructs. Massive, silent, and unnatural. Then the entities appeared again. The same forms from the earlier ground footage. Ethan felt something tighten in his chest, but his face remained steady. Human ships engaged them with precision. Not fear. Not hesitation. Experience. This was not first contact. This was repetition. Ethan paused the file again and sat back slightly. For the first time since arriving, he allowed himself a quiet breath. The Dominion belief system was built on a simple assumption: Earth had no history of external contact. All warfare evolution was internal. All development was isolated. But this data told a different story. Earth had been fighting something else. For a long time. Ethan did not know the full scale, but he understood enough. He copied the encrypted segments into a secure buffer and closed the system. The room returned to silence. When he stepped out, he did not rush. He walked normally, as if nothing had changed. But now, something had shifted in how he saw the Dominion. They were not studying a primitive species. They were studying a species that had been surviving under conditions they had never imagined. When Ethan returned to the observation area, Alan Reed was waiting. Alan looked at him carefully. "You accessed restricted archives." Ethan nodded once. Alan lowered his voice. "That is going to cause problems." Ethan replied simply, "It already has." Across the facility, Dominion systems began detecting irregular data activity. At first, they assumed it was corruption or human interference attempts. But then the analysis units began cross-checking the recovered files. Silence followed. Human soldiers fighting non-human entities. Not once. Not twice. But across multiple recorded centuries. Soren's expression changed slightly for the first time since arriving at Earth orbit. "This is not in their official history," one analyst said quietly. Another responded, "It contradicts all baseline assumptions." Soren did not speak immediately. He watched more footage. Then more. Then more. Finally, he said, very slowly, their history is incomplete. The analyst hesitated. Or hidden. Soren did not correct him. For the first time since arrival, the Dominion realized something fundamental. They were not the first outsiders to reach Earth. And worse than that, Earth had already learned how to survive them. The Dominion command chamber was no longer filled with quiet confidence. The mood had changed completely. The same officers who once laughed at Earth's history now stood still, watching replay after replay of the hidden footage Ethan Cross had uncovered. No one spoke at first. The silence felt heavy, almost uncomfortable, as if the room itself had lost balance. Commander Soren Vall stood at the center of the chamber, his arms behind his back. His eyes moved across the main display, where battle records from Earth's sealed archives continued to play. Human soldiers fighting unknown entities. Space engagements that did not match any known Dominion contact records. Entire centuries of warfare that had never been accounted for. It did not make sense to them. It should not have been possible. One analyst finally spoke, voice low. If these records are real, then Earth has been in contact with non-terrestrial threats for a long time. Another officer added, and they did not collapse. They adapted. That word, adapted, carried more weight than expected. The Dominion was built on structure, control, and predictability. Adaptation outside known parameters was something they respected only in theory, not in practice. Soren did not respond immediately. He kept watching the footage. Human units shifting tactics mid-battle without formal command restructuring. Soldiers making decisions that should have been impossible under stress conditions. Entire formations surviving encounters that the Dominion simulations had previously labeled as instant failure scenarios. But here it was, recorded, repeated, confirmed. Across the chamber, Captain Alan Reed stood quietly beside Ethan Cross. Alan had seen many strange things in his service, but this was different. This was not just hidden history. This was a complete change in how Earth was understood. Ethan remained still, observing the Dominion reaction without emotion. He had already known this moment would come. Not the exact timing, but the outcome. It always came the same way when truth replaced assumption. Soren finally spoke, voice controlled but no longer dismissive. Your civilization has been under external pressure for centuries without disclosure. Alan answered carefully. We were not always told everything we faced. Soren turned slightly toward him. That is not concealment. That is survival strategy. The words hung in the air. The Dominion officers looked at each other now with uncertainty. Their previous confidence had been based on a simple model. Earth was a young civilization with limited experience. Their warfare was emotional, inefficient, and outdated. But the new data did not support that model anymore. One officer spoke again. Their tactical evolution does not match internal-only conflict progression. Another replied, it matches repeated external pressure conditioning. Soren raised a hand slightly, and the discussion stopped. He looked at the projection again. They have been shaped by encounters we did not account for. Alan stepped forward slightly. You judged us using incomplete information. Soren did not deny it. That was what unsettled the Dominion most. For the first time since arrival, they were not correcting a misunderstanding. They were recognizing a fundamental gap in their own understanding. The simulation chamber doors opened behind them as more data streams arrived from Dominion analysis units across the fleet. Cross-referencing had begun. Multiple systems confirmed the same conclusion. Earth's history was not linear development. It was layered survival. Each generation had faced threats that forced rapid adaptation. Some were recorded. Many were erased. Not because they were myths, but because disclosure would have destabilized planetary order. The Dominion fleet itself began recalculating Earth's classification status. The results changed twice. Then again. Each update increased Earth's strategic complexity rating. Soren watched the shifting data with growing silence. His earlier confidence, the certainty that had defined his approach to Earth, was no longer present. It had not been destroyed by emotion, but by contradiction. A civilization that should have collapsed had instead refined itself through repeated unknown conflicts. That was not weakness. That was resilience under conditions the Dominion had never experienced. Ethan finally spoke again, quietly. You thought our legends were stories. No one interrupted him. They were not stories, he continued. They were what remained after the details were removed. Alan looked toward the Dominion officers. For the first time since contact began, he saw hesitation in them. Not fear, but recalculation. Soren turned fully toward Ethan now. These external entities, he said slowly. Are they still active? Ethan paused for a moment. Some were never confirmed gone. That answer was enough. The Dominion had entered Earth orbit expecting control through superiority. Instead, they had found evidence of a long-term survival environment that had shaped humanity without public awareness. Their confidence did not break in a single moment. It faded gradually, replaced by something far more dangerous to their strategy, uncertainty. Across the fleet, command structures began adjusting protocols. Earth was no longer categorized as a simple developing civilization. It was being reclassified into unknown threat exposure classification. Alan watched all of this unfold quietly. He understood what was happening now. Earth was no longer being measured as weak. It was being measured as unknown. And in Dominion doctrine, unknown did not mean safe. It meant dangerous until proven otherwise. Soren gave a final order to pause all simulation-based assumptions regarding Earth warfare models. The chamber dimmed slightly as systems updated. For the first time since arrival, the Dominion did not have answers. Only questions. And Earth, for all its silence, had already survived enough questions to last centuries. Alan looked at Ethan Cross, then back at the Dominion fleet reports appearing across the displays. The shift was complete. Earth was no longer underestimated. It was now being carefully re-evaluated by an empire that had just realized it might not be the first visitor to fear what Earth had already learned to endure.